What's up, everybody? Welcome back to RacingNews.com. Welcome back to another one of our Kentucky Derby updates. We are back this weekend to talk about everything that happened and everything that's coming up with the Arkansas Derby and the Florida Derby. All right, before we get to that, we'll also do Jon White and I's top five. I should mention that as well. But before we get to all that, we got to recap what happened last week. And boy, a couple of upsets here I would call one at least a fairly major upset, and then one kind of just a mild upset. We'll talk about the major upset first. The Jeff Ruby Stakes, where Final Gambit was able to get the job done at 15-1. Not only that, 3.5 length victory from dead last to the wire first. This was super impressive, the turn of foot on this horse. Now, they went very fast up front. It was kind of a contested pace. Also, the horse that turned for home with the lead, California Burrito, took a really bad step. He kind of looked like he was in that stalking position. He kind of looked like he was the one that was going to make a big move and maybe, win this thing. He at least took over at the top of the stretch. Didn't happen. He took a bad step. I haven't heard a report. I don't know, good, bad, indifferent. I'm not sure yet, but that ruined all of his chances. So it left Final Gambit to become flying late. Flying Mohawk, speaking of flying late, he was in 11th, and he closed up to finish second in the race. So it kind of shows you the closers really had their way in this one. Maximum Promise, third in this spot. And then Poster, where you would think, hey, if it favors closers, Poster did well. He didn't pick up his feet much in this race. He passed a few horses, but he was able to get fourth. Baby Max, kind of a disappointing horse. He was up pressing that pace a little bit, so maybe that's why he was, falling off as they turned for home. But, look, I think this race has kind of been the king of horses that were kind of maybe not even winners, but they also rans, and they come back and they win big races when we don't really expect it. It's hard to see it here in this time around for this year. Pretty low 90s for the winner in the Beyer's figure, and he was 3.5 ahead of the next horse. So, you're in the 80s with the second and third place finishers. So there's just not a whole lot I can take from this as far as the Kentucky Derby is concerned. I think Final Gambit is a horse that showed if he gets pace, he can close up. If you're going to pick, hey, what's one horse that you like? I think he is kind of the one because he just kind of dominated the race. But yeah, end of the day, just didn't take much from this race as far as the Kentucky Derby concerns. I would say if any of them win, I will not be winning on Kentucky Derby Day. All right, let's move on, though, to the Louisiana Derby. That's next. And it was Tiztastic for Steve Asmussen. So oddly enough, Steve Asmussen wins 2 of the 3 legs down there at Fairgrounds. Different horses, obviously, with the injury to Magnitude out of the Risen Star. But then comes back with Tiztastic here. And a no doubt winner again. This horse was, paid $750-1 there, as you see on the screen. So, but a no doubt winner. Like I said, just a 2.25 length victory. Another race here where they went fairly fast up front. There was a little bit of pressure. John Hancock, Yinzer was up there as well, Furio. So they were kind of pressuring each other up front. And so the speed did fall back. And kind of the same thing, Tiztastic was 9th early. He wins the race. Chunk of Gold was about mid-pack in 5th. He's up for 2nd. Instant Replay was last early. He gets up for 3rd. So it kind of shows you both races, the speed fell apart. Now, I don't really look at either race. This one probably more so than the Turfway race, because this one, you go 46 and change going a mile and 3/16, all of them doing it for the first time. That's pretty tough. So I do think the pace was more of a factor here. The speed may have just kind of fell apart with a so-so pace in the Jeff Ruby. But all that being said, you still have to close and get the job done. Those 3 horses I mentioned were able to do it. John Hancock, disappointing. He did get 4th, but he was on the lead and contested through a pretty fast pace. So he might move forward off of that race. It wasn't awful. A horse that we'll mention, Built and Vassimo. They were also rans last time out in the Risen Star. Yeah, they're just, there's not the horse, right? I just don't think they're good enough. Hypnus, another one that they just not good enough horses at this moment. They need to improve. Caldera, a horse that I know was very popular because of my racehorse. He stumbled pretty bad at the start. He did not get the positioning that I think, they would have wanted for him. But closers did run fairly well in this race. He was sitting about 6th, 7th at the backside, but just no run from him. That stumble may have really caused him trouble. And we've kind of seen it with him. He's still a little bit trying to figure out how to be a racehorse. So maybe that stumble just kind of threw him off. But yeah, not what you wanted to see out of him. So as far as what are we going to do with these horses going forward, I think Tiztastic is going to be a very popular horse as far as hitting the board, going to play him on the bottom of tries and supers. I don't know. I'm not really convinced, honestly. It was a very good race from him. I had the horse in second. That's 2 races in a row. I had the Asmussen horse in second down at the Louisiana Preps. So just couldn't get there, but needed to move him up one spot there. But good race from him. Yeah, I get it. He will pass tired horses in the Kentucky Derby. I don't think he's a serious threat, to be honest. Chunk of Gold and Instant Replace kind of feel the same way about him. Just not horses that I'm really interested in. So overall, not interested in a lot coming out of these Derby prep races this week, which is kind of surprising. I thought I would be, at least 1 or 2 of them, I kind of thought I would be interested in playing back, but not really the case. All right, let's get to Jon and I's top 5s now. We'll do that. I'll run through my 5 and his 5, then I'll get his comments, and then I'll react / talk about my, what my comments are, and we'll go from there. So number 5 for me is Coal Battle once again this week. Number 4 is Barnes. We're going to talk a lot about Barnes here in just a second in this part of the video. Number 3 is Sovereignty. Number 2, Citizen Bull. And number 1 again this week, Journalism for me. Let's go to Jon because he's got some changes. 5, Coal Battle for him. That's the same. 4, Citizen Bull. We'll talk about him more in a second. 3, Sovereignty. 2, brand new, Cornicopian. So Cornicopian goes into Jon's top 5. Barnes out. We're going to talk about this and break it down once I read, of course, number 1, Journalism. So what I'll do now, I'll read the quotes from Jon White here. He's very, very nice to send in a little bit of commentary, each week. So this will be Jon's words here. I'll read this and then we'll kind of talk about it. He said he was very, very tempted to put Cornicopian at number 1 this week after seeing that he's entered into the Arkansas Derby. I was tempted to go with Cornicopian in the top spot because his career debut victory at Oaklawn was absolutely sensational. And I also like the fact that Baffert is willing to put Cornicopian in the Arkansas Derby despite having only 1 race under his belt. That indicates Baffert is sky high on Cornicopian. Talk about that a little bit in a second as well. Jon goes on to say, it appears to me Cornicopian is an exceptional equine athlete, and I expect him to win the Arkansas Derby. Even so, I've decided to keep Journalism at number 1 this week due to Journalism being more experienced and more accomplished, obviously, the 1 race than Cornicopian. But if Cornicopian does win the Arkansas Derby, there's an excellent chance that I will be putting him in the top spot next week. So that's how high Jon is on Cornicopian. And obviously we'll be able to break down that race. He may not put him there if he wins by a half length and runs a 92 beyer, but I digress. Anyway, Jon goes on to say, meanwhile, I want to mention why I don't have Citizen Bull ranked higher than number 4. I've been a voter in the NTRA poll weekly for many years, and so far this year, I've ranked Citizen Bull number 1 every week. I think Citizen Bull deserves to be number 1 in that poll because he was a 2-year-old champ, and he's won his only start this year. My weekly top 5 on this video is different than the NTRA poll. My top 5 in this list is who I currently think has the best chance to win the Kentucky Derby, and there is something that concerns me about Citizen Bull in terms of the Kentucky Derby. My concern is that in 40 years, only 2 Breeders' Cup Juvenile winners have gone on to win the Kentucky Derby. Also this week, I've decided to drop Barnes from my top 5. While his last couple of workouts have not been bad, they probably should have been a bit better than what they were. All right. That's Jon White's thoughts there. Thanks, Jon, again for bringing that in or sending that to me so we could bring it on to the video. So let's talk a little bit about some of the situations. Let's pull up Cornucopia at number 2 because I think that he's probably a polarizing horse at this point, a very much an unknown, a very much you can't win the Arkansas Derby off 1 race. You can't win the Kentucky Derby off 2 race types of things. This is what I'll tell you. The fact that he's entered in the race, I agree with Jon. I think that's a great sign that Baffert thinks this horse is very, very good. I also think it's a really bad sign that Barnes is not in this spot. And I think Cornucopian is here because Barnes is not doing all that well in the mornings. And when you have your Baffert and you've got a ton of horses, you can do this type of thing, right? Pretend it's Briley that has Coal Battle. If Coal Battle's not doing all that well, you're still, but he's sound, but he's just not working out well, right? You're probably going to try to just run him anyway and hope for the best because you don't have a backup, right? And I don't want to put words in his mouth. That may not be the case, but a lot of times, let's face reality, that's kind of what happens with Baffert. When you got 4 or 5 horses, you work him out. And if you got one that's not working very well, there's really not a press to run him. And I think that's what's going on with Barnes. When they late nominated Cornicopian to the Arkansas Derby, I quickly was like, something's wrong with Barnes. And I think we're seeing it. And it's starting to come out. A couple of local California shows that John sent us audio from kind of said, look, they may even need to hit the reset button with Barnes. Like, he's not doing that well. Now, does that mean next week he could go out and run a great workout and then they've got him for the Bluegrass, or they're going to run him at Santa Anita? Absolutely. That could totally happen. We're talking right now at this moment. Horse racing can change immensely all the time. It does. Right now at this moment, the news isn't that great with Barnes and how he's working out, while the news is amazing with Cornicopian. I've never heard a bad thing about him. So I get why John puts him at number 2. Why I don't have him ranked is I've taken the approach all year long. Prove it to me. I don't need a rush to put you in if you haven't proven it to me. It's kind of worked. However, that doesn't mean it's still going to work, because Cornicopian may be built a little bit different than, say, a Patch Adams. So I could be wrong on this time around, but I will just wait. I'll keep him right there. And as far as me keeping Barnes in the top 5, prove it to me that he's not going to run in the Bluegrass or the Santa Anita Derby. How many times have we kind of counted Baffert out, and then a horse wakes up, they go gate to wire, and then they're right there. So I'm not rushing to do anything until they show me on the track. I will say this, spoiler alert, I'll probably pick Cornicopian to win the Arkansas Derby. So, but once again, to kind of wrap this up, both people, John and I have journalism at number 1 once again this week. And I think that is the right move until we see. And maybe I'm with John. If Cornicopian, say he progresses off what he did running the fastest 3-year-old maiden special weight in Oakland Park history, going 6 furlongs, say he progresses and wins the Arkansas Derby going 1 mile and an eighth, maybe I'll have him at number 1 as well. All right, last thing we'll do here is let me get the right screen up for you now. We will quickly preview the Florida Derby and the Kentucky Derby. Or not the Kentucky Derby, the Florida Derby and the Arkansas Derby. We'll have full previews of those out soon. But just quick previews here. Field of 10 coming up for the Florida Derby. Speaking of Bob Baffert, he did ship a Matticat Road up here. He gets the 8-hole Disruptor, a very, very highly thought of a Todd Pletcher horse with the 4-hole. And then Sovereignty, post 10 for him. So we'll see what happens with Sovereignty, of course, winner of the Fountain of Youth, and number 3 on John and I's top 5s. And then we will go right here to the Arkansas Derby. I'll be there live and in person this weekend. Ryan Stillman will be there as well. Jared Welch will be there as well. So if you want to meet the racing dudes, or even if you just want to hang out, great, we'll be there. So make sure to come check us out if you're at Oaklawn. Field of 9 there, and like we were kind of talking about, Cornicopian draws the 9-hole. We'll see what he can do in his second start, first stake start. Taking on Cole Battle, of course, winner of 3 Kentucky Derby prep races. So that's I would call Cole Battle a very good measuring stick. If Cornicopian beats him, and he beats him, let's say, by a couple, I think we can kind of determine he's the real deal. If Cole Battle beats him, well, he's not. So I think that's kind of where we look at. And I say he's not in terms of right now, because we're dealing with the right now. Cornicopian in July may be better than everybody, but you got to remember, he's just in his second start right now. He's got development to do. So Field of 9 there should be a lot of fun. For full previews of the Florida Derby and the Arkansas Derby, just stay tuned to the channel. If you're watching this one, they're either already out, or if you're watching this one live as it debuts, they'll be out in like 30 minutes. Don't worry about it. So, all right, guys, that'll do it for this week Kentucky Derby update. Going to be another fun week. Hopefully we learn a lot more. We learned a little bit last week. Hopefully we're going to learn a lot more this week. All right, guys, thanks everybody for watching this video. Hit that like button if you like it. Hit subscribe if you really like it. Want to get alerted anytime we do videos like this. And most importantly, good luck. And come back next week for another Kentucky Derby update.